In 1983, my life would be forever changed. The death of my father, murdered. It was 2 a.m. on December 13th when the news came. There was a loud knock at the door. I went to the door, and there stood a police officer, a detective, a big badge, and a shining flashlight. The detective leaned in, and he said very quietly, "Please go get your mother." When I turned, my mother stood right there. Within 30 seconds, loud screams from her voice echoed through the whole entire house. My father, murdered, found on top of a mountain in his car with a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. My life would change forever. About 3 weeks went by, and a school guidance counselor called my mother and asked us to come to school because she said sometimes when tragedy happens with children, they either become withdrawn from school or they start to act out. And she said, "I don't want that to happen to Julie." I said, "I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I must." I looked them both directly in the eye, my mother and the guidance counselor, and I said, "You don't worry, that won't happen to me. My core is too strong. What my father instilled in me, no one can kill." So over the next few months, I began to reflect on my past with my father and all the memories he had. And when he was living, we would talk sports, we would watch sports, we would dissect the game. We played sports, he would dissect my game and give me a lot of feedback, and I loved every moment of it. However, you might find a picture of me in a tutu at a dance recital. That was all Mom. She said, "If you're gonna play ball and dance through the tulips, Julie, you're also gonna dance." She said, "Sometimes in life you'll be faced with a challenge or something you don't wanna do, and you must do it, and you do it well." That was a valuable lesson that my mother taught me. Thank you, Mom. Back to my father and our conversations and how I loved every moment. And when we used to play sports and talk sports and watch sports, he used to teach me all kinds of lessons. At the time, I thought they were just lessons about sports. I did not know that they were life lessons. The lessons that my father taught me is why I stand on this stage today. It is the reason why for the past 19 years, I've been fully committed to this movement, and I won't stop until I can't go any further. It was all because of my dad. Lesson number 1, set a high bar of excellence, he said. Then he went on to say, "Never let anybody set your bar, Julie. You set your own bar, and when you reach it, you raise it." Lesson number 2, welcome challenges and learn from defeat. He said, "Never let the reason for your first defeat be the reason for your second defeat, because if it did, it means you don't properly prepare." So when people ask me, "Why do you prepare so much?" it's all because of my dad. Lesson number 3, he told me, whatever you choose to do, you do it passionately and you never apologize for it. In 1994, my life would forever change. Accepted to teach for America, to teach in Paterson, New Jersey, a low-income community. I welcomed that challenge. I was excited to apply the 3 lessons my father taught me. Lesson number 1, set a high bar of excellence. I went into that 8th grade English class and I said, by the end of the year, students are gonna be writing 5-paragraph essays with rich vocabulary. My mentor teacher tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "Julie, I like your energy and I like your spirit. These kids will not be writing 5-paragraph essays by the end of the year." She says, "They can't write. So this year, Julie, our goal is sentences." I looked at her. I didn't say it, but I thought it. I was like, she's crazy. Sentences? How would that ever prepare them to go to college? For the next week, I worked on sentences, and she was right. They couldn't write. They had difficulty with basic sentence structure. However, she was wrong if she thought my students were not going to be able to write essays by the end of the year. Time to apply lesson number 2 from Dad. Welcome challenges and learn defeat. I was like, here we go. The next day, when students walked into the classroom, there was a big poster, and it read, welcome challenges and learn from defeat. Never let the reason for your first defeat be the reason for your second defeat. And if you do, shame on you. I put it on the front of the room, and I posted it on the back. And on the back of the wall was for a student named Devon, because every time I started teaching, Devon would turn around in his seat. But today, I knew this lesson was... But today, I knew this lesson was too valuable, and so he turned around. I wanted him to read that poster. Within a minute, he turned back to the front. My mentor teacher, she entered the room again, and she said, Julie, you have to spend time on a lesson. They are too far behind. I smiled and said thanks, and then I shut the door. For the next 30 minutes, we talked about the quote. We talked about how it applied to their real life, how it applied to their neighborhoods, how it applied to their communities. I needed to hear their story, and they needed to hear my story. If we were really going to overcome challenges and reach a bar of excellence, we had to know where each other were coming from. One of my students, Camille, she stood and she said, Ms. Jackson, my mother cannot take care of my brother. She cannot take care of my sister because she cannot take care of herself. I take care of them, and I am frustrated because they do not listen. So when I go home at night, I write anything down so I can get a peace of mind. Each student continued to share their story, and I shared my story. And from this moment on, we were forever connected. It was time to begin our journey. For the next months, I worked really hard during class to get students to write. In a few short weeks, Kevin, Chantel, and Amber were making great gains and moving towards the goal. However, the other 28 students in the class were still struggling. I was not being successful. So I decided to dig deeper, and I started writing 3 lessons every single night for one class. And it was a lot of work, but I was truly committed to it. People would say to me, Julie, that takes too much time. Why do you do that? It's not sustainable. I would respond, I can either talk about the problem or I can do something about it. And my mindset is to do something about it. By December, 70% of my students were writing 5-paragraph essays. And by June, the other 30% had met the goal. This is because they welcomed the challenge and they learned from defeats along the way. In Patterson, I was able to directly impact my classroom. And although this was a triumph, it was not enough. Because the tragedy was, my friends, there were thousands of students in schools all across the country not learning, and that is criminal. In 1998, my life would forever change again. I went to work for North Star Academy. It was the first time since the death of my father that someone set a high bar of excellence for me, and they were truly invested in me. Norman Atkins and James Varelli. They pushed me to increase my impact, first as a teacher, then as a dean, then as a founding high school and elementary school principal. In my current role as managing director at Uncommon Schools, we directly impact 9,000 students. And although this is a triumph, the tragedy is there are still kids out there not being reached. As a mother, a wife, a mentor, an activist, an educator, and a coach, I move forward with the inspiration to dream big, to think big, and to stay focused on student achievement. And I always say, keep the expectations simple. No child should be in a school or in a classroom that I would not send my son Amari or my daughter to. So when people ask me, Julie, like, how do you do this? How do you sustain it? That's how. If I don't want my children in that class, then no other children in the country should be in that class. Tonight, I stand here. I am honored to get the Peter Jennings Award, and I promise to uphold the civic leadership and lifelong learning. I promise to do my part to impact excellence in education. Thank you for that. The recent Trayvon Martin verdict is a sounding alarm that in 2013, we must continue to fight for justice for all with greater urgency. The Trayvon tragedy instantly reminded me of the tragic murder of my father in 1983. So, my friends, tonight is a call to action for each of you in this room to make sure your actions and your words communicate to all children. They are important, they are talented, they are beautiful, and they deserve a seat at the table that makes decisions. And if my father were here tonight, he would tell you, set a high bar of excellence, welcome every challenge that every kid brings to you, accept and learn from their defeats, and always show passion. I leave you with the words of Marvin Collins, somebody I look up to, and I want you to repeat after me. I am a teacher. A teacher is someone who leads. There is no magic here. I do not walk on water. I do not part the sea. I just love children. So my final question to you tonight is, what do you want your impact to be?